You're almost building your little perfect organization there, Dan, around it sounded like you're building almost around a brand, let's say. Would you build it around the brand, that your kind of perfect like team there, as you mentioned? Would it be around customer, portfolio, therapy area? How what does that look like from your point of view?
For me, I wouldn't build. I would build it around a customer. I think that rather than a brand for a start, like definitely a customer or portfolio. I think, say oncology, for example, where you have got specialist therapy areas, but in most regions you're likely to have, and you will have specialists, but in most regions you'll have like general oncologists who cover multiple solid tumor areas, for example. In that case, then the team working should be a large team, and they should be working across the entire portfolio. I certainly do not think that. Certainly, budget will be spread across the product, but that team would be responsible for understanding how that is spread. Because at the end of the day, like, you have the inconsistent branding, inconsistent channels, inconsistent quality, of content going to an oncologist in a particular region across multiple products. Like, is just a weird experience. Like, you need to be able to understand. I would have an overarching portfolio style campaign, lead generation, say webinars, for example. And then based on interactions with webinars and the associated content, I know that this particular oncologist right now is probably seeing more breast cancer patients than they are lung cancer patients. And that's where is his biggest pain point. Therefore, I'm going to use my lung cancer product customer journey as a focus there. And I'm not going to send other things about breast cancer and stuff like that for now, because I think the general feeling for pharma is, well, we want to increase sales, so why not send them everything so they use both, so we focus on both products. For the customer, they're like, I don't want to hear from Pharma X, I don't know what company we call it, whatever, Pharma, I don't want to hear from them like all the time. And if you're going to send me an email, why don't you send me an email on lung cancer and breast cancer at the same time? So, you know what I mean? Why is it not in the same email if you guys are in the same company? So I think that's the thing for me. I do it portfolio, like customer level, but I think it depends on whether it's like secondary specialist care or like, it'd be very different. Like, I wouldn't do that with GPs, for example, like, because there's too many products. So then, yeah, like there maybe needs a different approach, which is a bit more complex. How do you handle, say, GP audience across multiple brands? If you're gonna, who owns GPs? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the answer to that. Who says like, we have like 50 brands that are creating content for GPs, and we need to make sure that they're not sending an email on the same day, for example. Like, maybe that is you talk about a central omni-channel type role. There needs to be some kind of responsibility there for, or customer experience role for understanding how brands are tailoring their communications to the same customer. I don't know.
Yeah,
Do you guys
yeah.
have any thoughts on that?
I was going to say, let's come back to that GP one. I do want to kind of build on that and then throw a question to you, Yasin, which is, say we have that perfect scenario, everybody's working around a portfolio therapy area, but in reality, if you agree with that, but in reality, what I see is people have their own goals, people are kind of measured on their own way, they have their own budgets, and they're doing things based on what they're measured on. And so actually, in that perfect world, how do you kind of create that in the current realities of the world? So practically, how do you think you would make that live inside your company in terms of where you're working, or a similar type of place?
Well, it's a very difficult question because there's a lot to unpack. But the thing is, it comes down also to your organization and who owns the relationship with, because even with those GPs, even if you organize it the way, for example, you describe it, Dan, you still have the challenge of global versus local, because a lot of the initiatives will have to be driven locally. And the thing is, very often on a local level, you have a ginormous sales rep team. You usually have one measly marketeer that's running, because every rep comes with different insights and says, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that. And there's no one to really orchestrate the channels or support the marketeers with actually providing them the right channels or more content. So I really think that already on a local level, we have, and maybe this will spark some controversy, too many reps. So we should take away some reps, replace them by marketeers, so that actually we can create the right content as well for example, our MCCP. For example, even for GPs, then there will be naturally, or oncologists, a categorization ABC. We expect the A doctors to be seen more frequently, but we don't create more content for the A doctors. So at a certain moment, then the rep runs out of content. He still goes to see that GP because he has to, because that's his target. But to speak probably about the Champions League game of yesterday, because there's not too much to talk about. There's no product messaging going out to that HCP anymore. So that's why I don't have an unambiguous answer. But I think if we look at how we're organized, we need to look at it from a global perspective, but then also from a local perspective. And that's very often where there's a very big mismatch, where even if we organize our global roles in then this innovative way, where we break down the silos, where there's omni-channel roles, centralized brand teams, etc., or portfolio brand teams, we don't necessarily organize it on a local level, because the local level is responsible for their own P&L. They operate however they want, but then the gears don't click together, because we're not at all able to have the same output as what global is expecting. And then you always have these fights between global and local. And again, I wish I had an unambiguous answer and everyone listening now had an aha moment and I was the bearer of truth. But the truth is, I also don't know, but I am genuinely convinced things need to be done differently, and that the rep model has to change a bit. And also, and this is something I often say on LinkedIn, we always model our forecast based on the amount of reps we have, but we don't take any other channels or tactics into account. And that comes down again to your brand planning. How do you do your brand planning? And based on your brand planning, how much output will you need to generate? And based on how much output you will need to generate, do you have enough marketeers and people to orchestrate from a medical and omni-channel side? Because we also very often see personalization, something, to be honest, I'm on the fence with, I don't really believe in. But again, that one poor measly marketeer that then has to coordinate the agencies, I don't think he or she is capable to then generate enough content that can then also be MLR approved for it to actually make an impact and be personalized. I'm not saying we need to generate more content, because we know I think the number is 5 billion spent annually that then is not even getting in front of the HCPs. But actually, how do we then get the right message again in front of the HCP? And sorry that my answer is not super straightforward and that everyone doesn't have an epiphany right now.
I think there's one thing you mentioned there around the one marketer, the example, and many field reps, and basically the marketer almost creating content on demand based on whatever each rep is asking them to do, right? I think a lot of that seems to come down to the fact that segmentation, your ABCs, what have you're doing, it is all based on reps segmenting these customers.
Exactly.
And there seems to be no segmentation beyond that. And so even then, digitally, which acts in silos to what reps are doing, in reality is then using the rep segmentation to then deliver content digitally as well, obviously, and it's all disconnected as well. So actually, you think before you can remove some of the reps and increase the marketers, do we need to figure out that whole segmentation piece to actually have it be a bit more holistic than just be field-based segmentation? Because otherwise you're just going to have loads of marketers who are still doing content and putting content out there based on maybe historic rep segmentation, for example. I don't seem to think that people know how to segment customers more holistically like that.
That's a very valid point, and I would say it depends, because depending on the market, there's different drivers for segmentation. For example, in an easy access market, if you're a rep, naturally, because you know if you're cunning that this will influence your MCCP, etc., you will probably put HCP that you have easy access to and a good relationship with. You will very quickly mark him or her as a doctor, because you know I need to see this a doctor this many times in this cycle. So I will mark him or her. And in Europe, in any case, we don't have prescribing data. So there's no one that can really check this. And by the way, by the time it comes out, it can just be adapted. That's it. So I do believe that there's also this kind of mechanics that are naturally there. And maybe I will slightly change the subject, but something that you then say very often is also that people and individuals are very busy then in their marketing and medical roles. They just fight from the one deadline to another, that they always need to go to the next thing and then don't have time to think about what they were doing. And this is also then something that for me is linked to the fact that we're then not fit for purpose, and we don't have enough people to then that have the capacity and bandwidth to also go back and do those analysis and see, for example, is the segmentation then the right one? Because did I achieve the messages that had to be delivered to specific HCPs? Did they actually deliver it? And my problem, for example, also with the MCCP is it only focuses on reach and frequency and not on message delivery. We're only measuring, did you send an email? But then if that email is the message that HCP should receive at the level he's at. For example, if we take something like knowledge ladder, should that email be about mode of action or about ease of use or anything else? This is not actually matched anywhere. I know it's very difficult to do, but that's why your rep is very knowledgeable and has the personal relationship. And for me, the rep then is the personalization engine that you would have. But we're not measuring all of that. We're not even trying to measure it. And so we're just seeing, okay, did you send an email? Okay, checkbox activity, onto the next thing so that I can work on the next deadline.